Hello everyone, I'm George from Ireland. So this video is about coronavirus and Darwinism because you all know Charles Darwin and on his Origin of Species talked about survival of the fittest, but fitness here is meaning, I suppose, the most intelligent, as in having some rationality. Now, you don't have to be exceptionally intelligent to survive coronavirus. Now, you could be a clever person just unlucky. You could be a dim person who took very foolish decisions on coronavirus and just be lucky. But if you are very dim and do stupid things, then you increase your chance of getting it a lot. Now, there are some gallant people who know they're doing dangerous things, doctors and nurses, but in the service of humanity are going out there, exposing themselves to risk to save others. They are rational, but they're choosing to do something perilous, not out of stupidity at all. Now, people of low intelligence, maybe I shouldn't be calling them stupid. It seems like a scornful word. Well, it is. And we should feel compassion. We try to help them, which is why governments have things like lockdowns, partly why, because sometimes governments are taking decisions on the behalf of those who can't really decide for themselves. It's like Edmund Burke said, when framing laws, we must remember that not everyone is rational, good, or clever. We must take into account many people are irrational, are bad, are just dim, and they don't have as much information as governments do. So I am averse to the nanny state. And then there's part of me says, okay, if you want to be foolhardy and go out there and mingle, have a gathering of thousands of people, you want to get coronavirus and die, that's fine by me. I mean, I'm not going to stand in your way. Pick your poison. We're all going to die anyway. You can choose how soon you're going to the Grim Reaper to some extent. But the trouble is it does impact on other people. Those people would come back, give it to their children, maybe give it to their elderly parents who may not have a choice about blocking out those who've exposed themselves to coronavirus. The police may come into contact with them. Shop assistants, a few shops have to be open, petrol stations. So some of these people, partly out of a sense of public spirit, are taking the risk, and doctors and nurses. Now, I know you could say, if you're choosing to work this time, well, you're accepting the risk, so be it if you catch it and die. You could resign from your job at the petrol station. You could choose not to be a doctor or nurse. All right, there is a certain logic to that case, but again, I think that's very unreasonable. I think we really would rather have doctors and nurses. Where would we all be without them? Even people who are very strictly self-isolating. Anyway, so Trump is trying to deal with this situation by his usual expedient of bare-faced lying, which has been so efficient for him really through his entire life. So he's diverting blame, he's scapegoating governors, and now, I mean, I don't think of any, certainly Democratic governors have been deficient, I could have been wrong, who are pleading with him to give him more aid, and he has grudgingly given some aid to New York. Saying, oh, it's all up to the states, when it's not. That's what the federal government is there for. It is a federal emergency, as Trump declared, ergo it is his responsibility. Saying that they're naysayers, nothing's ever good enough. Well, he was warned about this months ago. He could have stockpiled face masks, ventilators, everything they were going to need. He could have also told the governors to get their act together. But oh no, he was downplaying it, saying is the situation under control, in which case there would have been more face masks, in which case there would have been sufficient ventilators, in which case there would have been more than enough personal protective equipment, in which case you would have had a plan in place, in which case you would have locked down much earlier. But oh no, no contingency planning, totally not under control. By the way, supposing you believe Trump, supposing you believe that it was under control, that means that he's deliberately let it spread. He had it under control. If he controlled it, then he wanted it to spread throughout the United States. Anyway, I think this is suggesting that people are ingrates. They're not praising him sufficiently for his fantastic help. Misdirection towards these governors. Oh, it's up to the states. Ad personam assaults on any journalists who ask him decent questions. A journalist worth his salt will speak truth to power is a phrase Sean Hannity likes to use, except, of course, when Trump is the one being put on the spot to grill him. Ask him the tricky questions. Expose the deficiencies of the executive, whoever that might be. Democrat, Republican, it doesn't matter. So Trump just insults anyone who challenges him. You can see him seething at his press conferences when his performance is not met with adulation. He's just raging that people aren't rending the skies with praise for him. He expects it to be one long laudation session. So Trump is a boiling over maelstrom of odium and imbecility that America has suffered from for far too long. This idiocracy is just making it worse by telling them to try these completely untested medicines that can cure it. It killed at least one couple because he carries such weight as president. The prestige of his office, some people assume the president must be well informed, must be well intentioned. And unfortunately, these poor misguided people can follow his advice to their deaths. You know, go to church on Easter Sunday and whatever. Oh my God, we should open up in a few weeks. Some people will do it. Some governors will do it. So the United States has got over 800,000 cases of coronavirus, by far the highest in the world, by far. Not quite per capita, but the highest, but it wouldn't surprise me if it did reach that. So look at some of these advanced EU countries which had quite a lot of coronavirus, like say France, Italy, Spain, the United Kingdom, right? Some of the best healthcare systems in the world, they had about a 10% death rate. From coronavirus, over 10%. So if that's anything to go by, the United States is going to have at least 80,000 deaths. Obviously, it's nowhere near finished spreading. It's had about 43,000 already. Trump said it's going to be at least 100,000. So therefore, if he manages to keep it under 100,000, he's going to claim that as a success. So it'll be up to 200,000. I think 200,000 will be the floor, not the ceiling, for the number of deaths. Hey, I would like to be proved wrong. You know, I've got friends in the United States. I don't want them to die. I don't want their friends or relatives to die. So I think coronavirus couldn't have been kept out of the United States completely. Very few countries have kept it out completely. Oddly, the countries with the lowest rate of coronavirus, or actually some of the least developed countries, their relative poverty has actually been an advantage because they've they don't have many flights from the most severely affected areas. On the other hand, that's partly lack of testing and partly misdiagnosis, people dying and just the cause of death not being accurately recorded. So Trump tarried when he was briefed for months by world experts. This was coming. Get ready. But he didn't prepare at all. So the lack of preparedness was just criminal negligence. And then the dilatory response when it did reach the United States. So there was a tardy response in other places, such as the United Kingdom, for example. There were warnings from November. Joe Biden was publicly warning about it. Trump did everything to reduce public awareness, say it was nothing to worry about, it's going to disappear. So he hugely aggravated a problem he could have substantially reduced. Like most problems, it could have been solved completely, but it could have been lowered in its scale and severity, seriously lowered. And you might recall, in his briefings, Trump heaped praise on tyrant Xi, the president of China. So he absolutely idolizes Xi Jinping, I should say, president for life, as he now is, because Trump is so envious. He would love to have that untrammeled power and often claims to have it. Totalitarianism appeals to him very deeply. What is it in his psyche that makes him kowtow before the cruelest tyrants in the world who have no respect for civil liberty at all? You know, Trump believes in gun rights, no gun rights in China, and there's an awful lot of abortion. Try saying that at the Republican convention. See how that goes down, which suppresses many Christian churches, which is the sworn enemy of religious freedom. So he said that the Chinese government was giving them fantastic cooperation on coronavirus, all the info they needed. Well, now he's saying quite the other way. So would he like to apologize for being stupidly wrong in the old days, or was he just was he lying? Neither of those looks good for him. Now he blames China. He knew months ago about this, and obviously the People's Republic of China lies so much about the million Uyghurs they've locked up without trial or charge, trying to deracinate them. Won't even tell the truth about how people it executes. So I don't blame the Chinese as a whole, okay, but certainly certain elements of the People's Republic of China are to be held accountable for this because of the wet markets. Very poor food hygiene standards led to this supposedly bat soup. All right, it wasn't deliberate. They didn't want their own people to be killed. They didn't want their economy to tank, and they didn't want the odium of the world. So it was just foolishness it was just negligence. They should have taken it more seriously. Remember SARS, severe acute respiratory syndrome, 2003, swine flu, avian flu. They've all come out of Cathay. So they've had previous, so they've got to clean their act up for their own sake, as well as that of everyone else, because we're a globalized world, people jetting around, it gets around. And Trump, yeah, a real enemy of globalism, owning hundreds of properties around the world. If that's not globalism, what is? Trump, who often had his products manufactured abroad in countries such as Pakistan. So anyway, Trump said, well, we had the Civil War, 600,000 people died in that. Oh, so if only 600,000 people die in this is a success, not many deaths as the Civil War. Well, as the United States was fighting, then it's your job to kill people, to kill the Confederate Army, right? And I know in the process some of your guys are going to get killed. In the case of coronavirus, in case Trump didn't realize, his role is not to kill people, it's to prevent them being killed. And in fact, the Civil War, the number of Confederates killed was actually a measure of success for the United States, not failure, in case he hadn't realized, okay? So, you know, the United States didn't choose to start the Civil War. The Confederacy attacked them. The United States could have surrendered, or Lincoln even could have withdrawn troops from the South before that happened. He could have negotiated a withdrawal. But no, for the sake of a greater good, he chose to fight on, even though more people were trying to die. But even within the war, he tried to limit the loss of life for his own side. So it was a really exceptionally moronic analogy that he tried to draw. It was a completely false comparison. So when this is over, the economy will not bounce back like you're just pulling a rubber band to where we were in January before it struck. So there's a mass unemployment, record unemployment, 22 million, and obviously unemployment was going to be a litmus test of its success. You know, other countries, they've seen unemployment rise, but not by so much, because they've got measures in place to keep businesses afloat, to keep people in work. It's not all based on rampant consumerism. So many bankruptcies. Even businesses that are profitable are got less profit. Even people who keep their jobs think they might lose their jobs at any time, might be saving for a rainy day, more medical expenses, because, you know, this terrible insurance system, the co-pays, $4,000 for a coronavirus test is lie. He said everyone can get a coronavirus test who wants them. Well, then no, there's a shortage of equipment, there's a shortage of doctors, there's a shortage of nurses, and most people cannot afford it. The majority of Americans do not have $500 for an emergency expense, and this costs $4,000 on average. What was I going to say? So the economy is not going to bounce back like it was before. The economy was doing well, booming, Trump would say, but few are thriving now. I mean, even back then, the so-called boom, yeah, the super rich were getting rich at a tremendous rate, but the average American wasn't really getting rich, just stagnating, and a large minority, perhaps a third of the population, is getting worse all the time. So this is not the vagaries of the economy, COVID-19. I know it's a sort of natural disaster, but it could have been greatly mitigated. In fact, it's been greatly exacerbated by his completely asinine policies, his purblind approach to it. He was given warning after warning, which he chose to disregard because of his scorn for evidence, truth, intelligence. So the governmental directives were completely wrong, as they are now, urging states to reopen. And doesn't he really have the courage of his convictions to actually say it outright, to try and issue it as an order? I know he's got no legal power to do so. Trump said that so many people die of flu every year. Okay, well, that's true, but this is in addition to flu, okay? It'd be nice if the government tried to keep flu to a minimum. And this is a new thing. Okay, so everybody dies, therefore additional deaths are nothing to worry about. Well, I don't quite buy that argument. Now, I wouldn't do anything to preserve longevity. You know, the sort of lockdown that the United Kingdom has seen. Would I do that to save one life? No. Would I do it to save 100 lives? No. Would I do it to save 10,000 lives? Yes. And 1 million? I would do a rather more severe lockdown if it's to save 1 million lives. So it depends how many it's going to kill, you see. I mean, obviously, relative to the size of your population. The UK having a population about 70 million. But I know you could be a hardcore libertarian and say, just let them carry on, or you could be a real nanny stater, and I'm allergic to extreme authoritarianism. So coronavirus is not like the vicissitudes of health, such as the flu is. This is above and beyond that, and killing even people who are otherwise very healthy and young. Not so many if you're healthy and young. So Trump disbelieved in coronavirus, said it did not exist. It was a hoax. That's what a hoax is. a fallacy, something which is invented, which is imaginary, which is a lie. So there's another Trump lie saying that coronavirus is a lie, and the liar is now lying about lying, claiming that he didn't call it a hoax. Wow, he's really outdone for himself, a sort of triple lie. It is staggering and it's utterly nauseating. And then I'm always flabbergasted by the bottomless stupidity of many of his supporters who will believe him no matter how often he lies to them, no matter what whoppers of lies he tells to them, no matter how utterly unrepentant he is about these flagrant lies on a daily basis, several massive lies, not lies that are close to the truth, and deadly lies as well. I mean, it's like they said in the Second World War, careless talk costs lives. But this is not giving away secrets. This is the opposite, is giving people disinformation, disinforming the public in a way which is going to lead to their deaths. So when his duty is to be straight with the American people, their right to know, tell the truth, and he just does the opposite. And, you know, you think the Republicans are quite moralistic, would want someone who tells the truth, even when it's difficult to do so. It's sometimes hard to muster up the courage to tell it to people straight. They're not going to like it, but you got to do it. And he always chickens out because he's such a wimp. What a completely despicable coward. Self-serving, always perceiving this in terms of how does it impact on me? Oh, loss of profit, jeopardizing my re-election. So those who disbelieve in coronavirus are often those who disbelieve in evolution, who disbelieve in climate change, who disbelieve in data generally. So false beliefs, that would be really the bedrock of the Republican Party, that and a huge redistribution of wealth from the poor to the super rich. So these beliefs are disconfirmed. You know, coronavirus doesn't exist. Well, it definitely does exist. Even Trump is shouting that from the rooftops. But they don't see to us the source which tells them that coronavirus was non-existent. So coronavirus is most certainly extant. But that's where faith comes in. Tricking yourself into believing something that at another level you know is bogus. I mean, I know I was once a person of faith. So Trump to condemn people for not believing hard enough. It'll go away, it'll vanish, it'll disappear like a miracle. Wow. Presidential policy is based on miracles. Wow. I mean, well, yet again, I'm flummoxed by this. I'm just gobsmacked by this incredible idiocy. And then yet something like 42% of Americans would vote for him again. So if you don't have faith the size of a mustard seed, I mean, Trump, if you really do that, believe that, don't have any of these people around you tested. Why don't you go into a massive rally with tens of thousands of people if you really think that it's about to disappear? So the anti-vaxxers in some ways were pleasingly silent, but then some of them thought in the UK this had to do with mobile phone masts. Smallpox was such a scourge in humanity, killed millions of people every year throughout recorded history. Then as soon as we got everyone vaccinated, it vanished. Any connection? And then because people aren't being vaccinated anymore in some places, there's a danger it'll come back. But about Darwinism on its origin species wrote about natural selection. We've also got natural deselection, people opting out of evolution by doing utterly stupid things. So these Darwin Awards for people who've taken them out of evolution themselves out by doing really moronic things and getting killed about it. Bit of Schadenfreude, I suppose. So that's really irrational to disbelieve something which is proven to be true and put your faith in something which is not proven to be true and indeed might be proven to be false. And that is Trumpism, and that's why the Republican Party really overlaps very greatly with the Christian fundamentalist movement, a confederacy of dunces, and mostly is in the former Confederacy. Now, I don't want to be disparaging about people from the southern part of the United States. Some of them are marvelous. Some of them have no truck with the Confederacy. Could be very rational people, but I'm afraid to say there's a significant minority there, at least, who are deeply irrational, white supremacist, religious fundamentalists, and so on. I know you don't have to be all these things. You could be a Christian fundamentalist who is anti-racist, okay? But quite often they go together. So Trump is lashing out, blaming China. And, you know, that's really shutting the stable door after the horse has bolted. You might have been useful if you said that in February. All right, but you didn't. Now that you're desperate, you just really have no answers. So trying to divert attention from the manifest failings of your maladministration to Cathay, and that's not doing us any good now. Withdrawing from the World Health Organization, a really moronic and foolish thing to do. And I just discovered the United Kingdom now is actually the biggest funder of the WHO. It was the second biggest funder. I had no idea. The UK is not the biggest population, second biggest population at all, about the 20th. The UK is about 1% of the world population. What percentage of the world's wealth does it have? Higher than 1%, but not incredibly high. So the UK is extraordinarily open-handed with the WHO, a bit too open-handed, I think. So Trump directing his fire at various governors of New York and California and so on. He frittered away his 2 months he had to get ready for this, but nothing was in place. No roadmap out of it either. Just like randomly reopen completely, not phasing it up in safe states or safe age groups or certain sectors of the economy. No. Complete chaos as usual. Make it up as you go along, flying by the seat of the pants, the height of irresponsibility. So Trump claims to have total power. His authority is total lie. What a moron, doesn't know the first thing about the US Constitution. He has total power, but he takes no responsibility. The prerogative of the harlot throughout the ages, as Stanley Baldwin said. So no federal testing program. He could have used the US military to test people, their doctors and nurses, use their logistics systems to get what's needful around the country, use veteran administration hospitals, everything, thrown the kitchen sink at it, but he's not doing that. He's Nero as usual, fiddling while Rome burned. So what's the federal government there for, if not to take over when it's exigent? This is in extremis. So in the 1770s, when the United States went independent, even sometimes for some years after the revolution, there was basically no federal government. There was Congress, that was it. There was no president. There was a president of Congress, but not president of the United States, and that the president of Congress changed very frequently. That's not the same as George Washington. He never held that post. So states tried to cooperate on an ad hoc basis without a federal machinery, but it just didn't work. So they decided this confederation was too loose and feeble. No more Articles of Confederation, 1788 Constitution. A lot of people don't realize that. And that's why it's there, to fill in the gaps between the states when the states can't manage things, to knock heads together, to be bigger, wider, when it's needed. And if it's not needed now, I don't know when it ever was needed. So the United States mustn't be over-compartmentalized. Some states are closed, some are semi-closed, some are open, some which are semi-closed are going to reopen. So, New York and California appear to be got a good handle on it because they're quite rational. The first states to be seriously affected, very globally engaged states, some very densely populated cities. They've had their lockdown, and that's having an effect. The numbers going down. Be premature to lift the lockdown. But then states with at a very low rate of it, okay, it's got in there, but it's in every single state. There's been at least one death. So then some people are going to be carrying on as normal, and some of the other states less severely affected, which is just as is going to start to increase. So the thing is, there's always a time lag. You have your lockdown. It might take up to a month to see a fall in the cases. You have your lockdown, and the cases might start going up because people often don't show symptoms for days, maybe weeks. Could be asymptomatic, and they'll get diagnosed sometime afterwards. And obviously the deaths might be going up even after it's fairly safe because people catch it. They don't die that day. Usually it takes several days. It could take a couple of weeks. So that's why you have your cause and you feel the effect significantly later. And that's why some states which are going to come out of lockdown foolishly might not notice too much of an effect. And then it'll rip. So you want to stay ahead of the game, not behind it, not really flattening the curve. So what the United States needs more than ever is a concerted, rapid, logical response. And the government is not acting in close concert with the governors. The federal government ought to be there to coordinate response between the states and then do what states can't, given the state, the control of the military and having so much money. Help those who cannot help themselves for various reasons, to plug the gaps. So the White House is palsied by arrogance, by complacency, that it would just go away. This is do-nothing government. It's not saving people when it could so easily have done so. These press conferences are just boasting marathons. Braggadocio, that's his stock and trade. So he's a bombast fellow, and it really is nauseating. He was ignoring coronavirus almost like Belarus was, carrying on as normal. So Trump says that he's done a magnificent job This claim that it had was under control, and that was totally wasn't the case. Yet more lies, and these are killer lies. So yes, he banned Chinese people from coming to the United States. He did not ban people coming from China coming to the United States in February. Some of them were American citizens or green card holders. You say, well, you were going to keep them out? Well, he could have done that, but more acceptable, test them at the airport. No attempt to test them. Every single one of them could have had coronavirus. Unlikely, I know. And there were tens of thousands of people coming. And the green card holders, you could say, well, we're going to have to keep you out for the moment. I mean, Trump is not sympathetic to foreign citizens who are legally resident in the United States. Think of all the vicious things he said about them. Or you could quarantine those who tested positive, or even quarantine all of them, even that tested negative. Depends how circumspect you want to be. That would be tough. He likes to say he's tough. He banned flights from the European Union, which at least had a lockdown, but didn't ban them from the United Kingdom, which had no lockdown. So letting it in that way. So people say, oh, well, Nancy Pelosi was against this or that. Hey, some Democrats got it wrong. But you know what? Nancy Pelosi's not the president. She's not seeking election in November. She wasn't giving all these expert briefings like he was. So, Trump's got to be judged on his own merits, not trying to divert attention to her. Urging people to go to church was the stupidest thing he could have done, make it much worse. We'll see what the United States has done to try and deal with it now. This 2.2 trillion stimulus package. And we were told the Green New Deal was too expensive. Well, look at the United States can do what it needs to. Why not tax the rich? They can afford to pay a bit more of their wealth to help the neediest. People are dying because they can't afford medical care. Oh no, but the billionaire mustn't pay a tiny fraction more to save lives of his fellow Americans. How unpatriotic is that? I mean, I know I hate paying tax, but I'm not a billionaire. So Trump is sticking his head in the sand and thereby exposing his thinking parts, thinking he can wish it away. I mean, how imbecilic can you get? It was willful myopia about this disease for so long, and he was always lashing out. People expose his gross incompetence, false accusing others, being fake news. He is fake news himself, saying these are nasty questions. Nasty in this case means a good question. He's never got a good answer. So the bragging sessions do nothing for the public, congratulating himself on his viewing figures, praising Michael Pence to the moon for his circumlocution, not answering a relevant question about coronavirus, not actually helping the public. The idea is to be evasive about their failings. Remember Dr. Seema, I can't remember her name, she's an Indian American on some Fox News show, and she responded with periphrastination in a question about ventilators. Wow, it was despicable. So do you have enough or not? Well, we're working hard on this and we have lots of ventilators. Do you have enough or not? Wow. And they didn't really put her on the spot because she's a Republican. So Trump claims the US is the king of ventilators. Is it? Evidence? How many do you have, especially vis-a-vis other countries? Probably another lie. No particulars there. No evidence to back up his outlandish claims. So the federal government was bidding for items, driving up prices, just making it worse for states. I mean, at best, it's just perniciously stupid. But, at worst, it's downright evil. People are going to die because the Trump White House has purposefully made these things too expensive. So they're distributed on the price mechanism. The federal government could even just buy them and give them to states and reimburse them. So the maldistribution of aid is distributed on the basis of electoral considerations, Florida being crucial. That's a weather vane. Whichever way Florida turns, the United States turns, comes to a presidential election. So he's politicized life-saving. He doesn't give a damn about his own citizens. So I know trying to get the states to cooperate is trying to herd felines, which is why the federal government might sometimes have to use the thorough. Now, I don't know what the legal framework is, what they're entitled to do, but no doubt Trump is. And when he claimed the president's authority is total, he couldn't cite anything in the Constitution makes it total. It's definitely not total, idiot. What about separation of powers? What happened to states' rights? Why are Republicans not up in arms about this? They should be outraged. Imagine them frothing at the mouth with fury if Obama had said that. Okay? Trump didn't order the lockdown, and so he can't order it to end. He can't make businesses open also if they don't want to. He can't oblige people to go back to work if they don't wish to. They think it's still too dangerous. So he's got no regard for the Constitution, and he couldn't name a single governor who supported him on the basis of this ludicrous and flagrantly false claim. So states' rights, usually Republicans are saying, back off Washington. We don't want people inside the Beltway poking their nose into our affairs, telling us what to do. But here they are, and the silence is thunderous on this issue when they won't lambast President Trump for trying to ride roughshod over states' rights. Okay, if a Democrat was trying to trample on their rights, they would be up in arms about it. So Trump has spent much of his presidency trying to undermine faith in public institutions like the judiciary, the FBI, the CIA, the NSA, simply because all these public-spirited and rational people exposed his knowing cooperation with Russian intelligence to undermine the integrity of the US election, all the rest of it, all his links to filthy money in Russia, to the Russian mafia. It's all documented, it's all just proven beyond a penumbra of doubt, but he says it's fake news. And we're supposed to believe him rather than them. And jaw-droppingly, tens of millions of Americans do believe him. The most prolific liar in human history. I think I can say that without fear of contradiction. I cannot think of someone who's lied more in human history. People have been more evil, who've killed far more people, but nobody has lied as much as Trump. So in that way, he really is the greatest. I know he's so fixated with superlatives. He's the richest, the best, the cleverest, the bravest. Everything is the very most. Credible, hey? So anyway, he's introduced hyperpartisanship into American politics. I really hope he's not changed the US political scene permanently. If he has changed it permanently, I would hope it be as in the annihilation of the Republican Party. So he reproaches people for telling the truth like Fauci, and whereas Trump himself is always spewing falsehoods on television, and the wholesale deglutition of such falsehoods by a large gullible minority is very disturbing. These zombie lies that will not die, like the trickle-down economics thing, or that like climate change is a hoax. I'm not sure which ones I'll come out with about climate virus. Even if you nail this one through the heart at midnight, some people still believe it. So that is how the Republican Party is incredibly clever, getting so much of the working class to vote for their own impoverishment, getting people to think that affordable healthcare is evil and say it's socialism. But even if it is socialism, that does not in itself make it bad, So would you accept a ventilator from the federal government? Oh, I would. Isn't that socialism? Wouldn't you rather die? I mean, how stupid do we get? So when they care for the military, it's capitalism. But when they care for civilians, it's socialism. I don't see the distinction, actually. So what's the difference in principle, really? Everybody works, just about. I know the military work. So other people work. Why do they get healthcare through their work? So denialism, that COVID-19 didn't even exist. I'm surprised so far he hasn't said, no, the numbers are fake news. It's not 800,000, it's about 200. Or no, nobody's died or something. Anyway, remember where you heard it first. Mark my words. Before long, he'll start saying that the data is false. So there's so much denialism over, say, evolution, over climate change by Trumpists, over gun crime causing deaths, over the existence of racism, and in some cases, a Holocaust denial. You don't have to be denial of all of those, but some people are denial of all of those. I think one leads into the next, like a gateway drug. I think of Jared Kushner, so over-promoted, and he's got a crucial role in all this. The clown prince. Born with a golden spoon in his mouth. Now, you could be born into a very rich family, very talented, hard-working, public-spirited, but he's none of these things. It hasn't made him reflect and be grateful to others. This registered Democrat as he was. Why did Trumpers not find him unacceptable? And if he was a Democrat, why is he serving, a Republican who's the antithesis of everything? Maybe because Jared Kushner, like his father-in-law, cares only about himself and doesn't give a damn about anyone else or ideology or even know what ideology is. Someone with mediocre grades who got accepted by Harvard and top business schools, and it just so happened that his father pledged millions of dollars to these places, and then they took his substandard son. Might there be a conflict of interest there? Wow. Again, words fail me. How corrupt is that? But Trump is always praising himself. Self-praise is no praise. Crowing over his successes as 2,000 people die a day from coronavirus. Playing videos of odes to himself. This is meant to inform the public about what they're going to do about coronavirus. It doesn't tell the public something useful. This is our strategy. This is what to do. These are things to avoid. That's what a responsible president, one who actually gave a damn about the people he's supposed to be serving. So Trump expects paeans from his craven sycophants, and accepts these odes as no more than his due. And then when he was called out on the fact that he played this sickening session of craven obeisance to himself, Trump then lied and claimed these videos were laud for these courageous doctors and self-sacrificing nurses who are doing daily battle against coronavirus. Well, that's not true at all. These were videos of people saying obliging things about Donald J. Trump. These doctors and nurses, they are laying down their lives for their patients. Lack of personal protective equipment, which Trump could very easily have provided, could have paid for, got them to reimburse later, could have got factories to produce under his powers, didn't do so. So, you know, he effectively gave him a death sentence. He could have so easily saved them, but he didn't give a shit. And Trump expects abject obeisance and thinks that extreme praise is no more than his due. He expects it. It's the absolute bare minimum that he's entitled to. And that sense of entitlement is a thread that really runs through his whole life. So this is part of Trump's war on truth and the broader Republican war on truth. But the anti-vaxxers, as I say, been fairly quiet on this one. It'll be fascinating to see when a vaccine comes out, if it comes out, if they'll accept it. I'd accept it in a heartbeat. We're told the vaccines are so bad for these things. Yeah. And you Christian fundamentalists, why don't you just pray? If you think the Lord will save you, you don't need a vaccine. And what about gun nuts who are often Christian fundamentalists? You want to be safe? Why don't you just pray that the baddie will be defeated by God? If you really have faith, get rid of that gun. Prayer will save you. Or maybe you don't actually think that prayers are that powerful. So anyway, I was checking out the death rates, and the UK has had something like 202 deaths per million. Now, the US has had about 127 deaths per million. So it's not as bad in the United States yet. It'll be getting that bad. Many countries, including China, have a far lower death rate than the United States already. Now, admittedly, I think China's lying quite substantially. It'd be rash to hazard a guess. What is the real death toll in China? 3 times higher than they're saying? 20 times higher than they're saying? I just don't know. Yes, I could be wrong. I can't prove it. But as I say, they have previous. They've just got no credibility as Beijing lies so enormously, so demonstrably about so many vital matters. So, you know, compared to the US, 127 deaths per million, Singapore's had 2 deaths per million. Yeah, you got that right. 2 deaths per million. Because it is doable. They had a hardcore lockdown. They're a city of 5 million people, very, very densely populated. They had sensible, rational, clear policies, firmly enforced, and they've kept the death toll to an absolute minimum, you know. So 2 deaths per million, that's like a car crash a day. That would we expect in the normal course of events. So this was doable. It was so avoidable in the United States, significant death, but Trump has made it happen. MAGA, hey? So this daily Dunciad from Trump carries on, and he'll be boasting for the next few months about how splendidly he's performing. When is the lockdown going to lift? It depends slightly when it means lift. I mean, totally lift, partly lift, might lift and then have to come back in certain places. And also, when would you lift it? How low is it going to go? We're probably going to have at least one infection each day for a year. In countries which are already severely affected. We're just not going to go back to having none. We've got to decide as a society what we consider a tolerable death toll and what we consider an acceptable level of economic damage. All right, signing off now. Toodaloo.